What's up?
It's been a long time since you did a shop tour.
It has been a long time since we've done a shop tour. Let's do a shop tour. What's going on, everybody? I'm Tyler, and welcome back to the shop. This is 2022, and this is a shop tour. Let me give you a quick spin around before we get started. That's the door we just walked in. This is kind of the workflow of the shop, working our way all the way around, just like that. We got some finishing tools over here. We've got the HVAC right here. We're looking at our lumber rack. We're looking out the window right there, and that's the door we just came in. Let's show you what we got. A quick look outside. As you can see from the last shop tour we did, the shop is still in the same spot, but the barn looks totally different because we painted the outside of this barn. That is really got nothing to do with the shop, but that was one of the cheapest, biggest, most transformational changes we've ever done on a project. For like 300 bucks, totally changed the look of the barn, and it matches the house, and it looks fantastic. As before, the wall of the shop is right about there. The shop sits in the back of this pole barn right here, which I believe is 30 by 50 long, but someday I need to measure that and refresh my memory on that. The shop is 16 by 30, which is about 480 square feet in the back, all insulated around there in the mini split, which I have a video that talks about that I put out recently. You can see links to that down in the description below. Does a great job of keeping that shop warm and cool, with one exception, which we'll get to inside. And stepping right in front of the barn here is the addition that we put on the house, which has a drive-through garage. So cars park in there, but we can drive through right here and get into the barn. If we have a big load of material that needs to go into the shop or into the barn, I can back the truck right through and unload from there. Then moving into the front portion of the barn here, which many of you have seen when I'm finishing projects, this is insulated on the sides but not on the top, unlike the shop, which is right here, is heavily insulated on the ceiling of the roof of the shop as well. A lot of you have seen this where I do heavy finishing, so if I have to spray a pigmented finish, if I have to spray a big project like kitchens, I do this out here. And in the winter time, it's insulated on the sides but not the top. I can fire up the wood stove right there. I can burn some scraps, heat the area up. Because I spray waterborne finishes, you can do that safely with a fire right there, because if you spray a waterborne finish in the fire, it's just going to put it out. Nothing too exciting right there. This is the finishing cart, which is a prized possession of the shop. We'll get to that later. We're going to step into the shop now, and we're going to kind of run through the steps of a full project. So you guys saw the zoom about when I showed you the roundabout of the shop, and much has changed since we did the last video. But the layout, for all intents and purposes, is the same, minus maybe a shift of a couple of inches for different tools, for new tools to make room for them and whatnot. But the layout, as always, as it was before, is very important to the workflow of the project and making sure I'm efficient as can possibly be in the shop for the time that I have. So in the same place is the same lumber rack that we had. No changes at all. The 1/2-inch EMT conduit is holding up spectacular. As you can see right here, this whole shelf is filled with hickory, which is very heavy, very dense wood, and it's looking great right there. So I wouldn't change anything. Still a little tight over there with the trash can, but we can move that out of the way. And I have had something in the line of like 15 sheets of plywood up in there before. No problems at all. All right, shifting around a little bit. So what happens when you come in the door? You either going to put lumber down on the lumber rack, which is right over here. You are going to go over to the miter saw, which is the highly likely area that you're going to go to break down some of that wood that you're going to bring in. Or you're going to go to the bandsaw, which is right behind you guys right there. We'll get to that at the end, where you can resaw, you can cut in half material that you might have. But if you are going to come right in here, which most of the time, I'm going to bring lumber off the rack or lumber off the pallet rack, which you may have seen when I did the roundabout of the outside portion of the shop. Most times I bring a piece of lumber in, I'm going right here to the miter station. Obviously over here we got a miter saw. I got lots of finishes up here. Some of my favorite ones that I've dialed into are here, sitting here with mixing mate buckets on there. We'll get a close-up of that in a second. But I got miscellaneous hand tools. We got jigs, like drawer slide setting jigs, drawer front setting jigs and stuff like that are all in this, along with some different measuring and glue up stuff like that. I got my Fuji guns inside here so that the finish doesn't get too cold. I got some mineral spirits, lacquer, denatured alcohol, stuff like that. And here is my favorite finish, general finish, a sanding sealer with clear Enduro poly. And I got the mixing mate buckets right on top so I can very quickly refinish my refill my 3M PPS cups. I do have some other things in here, some Rubio Monocoat, some stains, Total Bolt Halcyon, which is my favorite outdoor finish, and then some various different finishes for kitchens, some leftover stuff I've had for a long time up on top. I am still rocking away with the same non-sliding 12-inch rigid miter saw that I've had for many years. It is a R41221, got no complaints. Rigid does have a new gliding saw, which looks pretty sweet. The big reason I didn't really want a slider, mind you, the capacity would be very nice, is I don't really want this sticking out into the walkway. This is a relatively narrow walkway with the table saw right there and the assembly table, so I don't really want this sticking out in the way. There is a saw, I think, that has like a throat that folds up out of the way. Not sure which one it is, but I really have no complaints with this. It's slightly underpowered with a high tooth blade like this, but it's worked well for me so far. And with the repeatability of the stop block on the miter station, flipping a board over to get a full, I think it'll be 14 inches of capacity. I think this is about 7.5 or something like that. 14 inches of capacity if I flip that board. I've never had to cut anything wider on the saw. Sliding down to this side, I got St. Joseph keeping an eye on me. Got some water for myself, some screws. This is my glue cleanup water in the trusty old Daisy sour cream. This is my glues, and so not the refillable glues. Let's say I got my stock glue up there, lights, an extra circular saw, and glue up, medical kit, router bit, stuff like that is all housed in here. Special measuring devices, different cutting tools, stuff like that in the top, kind of messy. And yeah, laser level, stuff like that. Good stuff up in here. Working our way right down the side of the shop, we're going to go talk about the router table. That's not really going to be the next step in the project. Probably going to go to the milling tools, which are right here, and we'll talk about them in just a minute. But this is a Rockler router table with a Rockler lift. This is the same thing that I believe I had when we did the last shop tour, and it is the same Craftsman router has hung in there, although I think of all the things in the shop, the next thing to go is probably going to be that router. It seems to really be struggling in there. I don't know, maybe I could change the brushes and everything would be okay. But to get a slightly higher horsepower capacity router would probably be a good idea. But again, I got the router bits right over here in the miter saw station, and then I got a mess of tools on the bottom. I'm not sure if you can see them, but they are feather boards and stuff like that. I got a sled for cutting the rails of doors, which I use a lot actually, and that's a super handy sled from Rockler. It goes right on the table with your rail and style router bits. Then moving down this way, this is definitely a new tool from the last shop tour. This is a Super Max 1632 drum sander, and it is awesome, especially when you got to do a bunch of drawers. Like I'm talking like, not drawers, doors. Bunches of doors. You can glue up your rails and stiles, send them to the sander. Mwah, they're absolutely perfect, super, super easy to do. So if I was to get this again, I would probably get the bigger model, just because flipping a board over to get the full 32 inch, you almost always have a little bit of a ridge. So a lot of the doors I have done and do are not necessarily much bigger than 18 inches. So I can't remember what the next size is. 18, 36 maybe is the next bigger one. Why didn't I get that one? Because this was the only floor model, the only model available when I needed this, and I had to go pick it up and bring it back. I wasn't going to wait for go back, drive all the way down to the Rockler store where I got this, and go back again to pick up the bigger one. So this one has worked, and the bigger one doesn't have the quick adjust, which is really nice on this, and I think the footprint was a decent amount bigger. Which, as you can see, there's really not a home for this drum sander in the shop. So when I need it, I roll it out of the corner, I take the dust collection out of the router table, and I plug this into there, and that's how I run it. And I'm able to move it down here so I can get long boards through here if I need to. When I'm done, I roll it out of the way over here, disconnecting the dust collection, and we are good to go. And yes, I did build this custom base on there. It had a base with rollers, but it didn't have any shelves or anything underneath. So I got room for sandpaper, and I have a drawer under here for other sandpaper that I don't use in the drum sanders, in the hand sanders very often, and sand belt cleaner, stuff like that underneath there. Moving all the way into the corner is the XCarve on a folding table. I've had no ill effects of putting the XCarve folded up like that. Saves a ton of room. This is the second XCarve I've had. I didn't buy either of them. This is the 750. I think it's the middle one that XCarve used to offer. I'm not sure how many upgrades they've done since then. It's a fun tool to have. It's frustrating to get things out of your head, for me at least, onto paper or onto an SVG that you can utilize with this machine. But they make improvements to easel all the time. So for a cheap entry level machine, it does a good job for the things that I do, which I make clocks, I make signs, like wedding presents. It's great for wedding presents, and router templates. If I need to make like a super accurate router template to then trace on the router, this thing is actually super handy for stuff like that. Now, is it worth it to buy just for router templates? I don't know, it's up to you, but it works for me. Again, I didn't have to buy this machine, but it is handy to have, and I'll keep it for now. Alrighty, moving over to the milling area of the shop, and as you can clearly see, this is brand new compared to what was in the shop tour last time around. Last time I had a Craftsman 6 1/8 inch jointer, straight blades, and I had a rigid 13-inch planer, portable lunchbox planer, also with straight blades. So that rigid planer I did upgrade to a Helix helical cutter head, and it was amazing. And then I murdered it. So I jammed hickory boards through there twice, and like locked up the motor. So I basically killed it. The Helix cutter head was magical though, but just with a 120 volt machine, maxing it out with hickory, I killed it. So I had to go purchase myself a bigger planer when that happened, and the jointer was actually replaced before that. It was just time to go to something bigger than a 6-inch jointer. So I went with an 8-inch Grizzly. This is a parallelogram bed, and it has a monster motor in there, and it's a Helix cutter head, helical cutter head, which is just amazing. It's a beautiful finish right off of the tool, and plenty of power, and the 8-inch is fantastic. And then I've made a video showing how to joint boards even wider than 8 inches. As long as you can remove your guard off of there, you can lip off the edge of that, and then you can use your planer to complete the surfacing on that board. I'll link to that video in the description as well. So after I murdered my rigid planer, my trusty lunchbox planer, I went to this monstrosity compared to the other one. Again, this is got, I don't even remember the motor size. You can look at the specs based on the part number, but it is a absolute beast compared to. Now, you got to remember, you're going from a lunchbox planer that's like $300 to something like this, which was, I don't remember. I think I looked recently to see how much it was. It was like $3,500, but I don't remember what I paid, but it wasn't that much before life in the world went a little bit crazy. So I got both these machines just in time, to be perfectly honest. Spiral cutter head in here as well, multiple speeds, 15 inches wide, and you can put 15 inches through that thing, take a big old cut off of there, and it just gobbles it right up, steady as can be, which is probably the biggest noticeable thing. Obviously, you put a board in, it has plenty of power, it doesn't slip as much, but it's just hefty. So you can put a big old 7.5 foot slab through here, and it will hold it. You don't have to make sure you don't tip the whole thing over. It's just really, really awesome. Dust collection on it is great, and I did put a Wixie digital readout on here, so I can dial right back in to the thicknesses that I wanted, which is really nice, because if I surface some boards, boards for a project, move on, maybe adjust this for something else, and then realize, hey, I need another board at 3/4 of an inch, I can get exactly back to 0.750 inches on this now, and that's pretty sweet. Also, in the back there, this is a Oneida V3000 cyclone dust collection system. I did a project with Oneida and they gave that to us. Obviously, that is piped all around the shop. I got blast gates at all the tools so I can turn them on and off to make sure I have maximum dust extraction and airflow. This filters inside the shop. It does have a silencer that Oneida offers on there, so it's relatively quiet, and it's a monster. I have never plugged this up no matter what I'm doing, including full capacity planing on the planer. It just eats that dust right up. It does have a sensor on there. It tells me when the bin is full. Bin is a little bit small for some of the work that we do in here, but we can live with that. And I wanted to say something else about that system, but I don't remember. Obviously, it's got a remote on there, so I have that on my EDC tool belt, which we'll cover in the end, and that powers right up. Big old horsepower, 240 motor on there as well. So I got three 240 legs running into the shop. We got 240 for the heater, which we'll get to in a minute. We have 240 for everything in a line right here. So the table saw, the planer, and the jointer are all on a 240 branch. And the reason I was able to do that, and it's worked so far, is I never run these at the same time. So I either got one of these running and the dust collector, which is on its own run, and the heater can all be running at the same time, and I can run other tools in here at the same time with no issues. So one of these is on 240, dust collector is on its own, and the heater is on its own as well. We have now turned the corner. We are going down the west wall of the shop, and it's much more full. So drill press, same thing I had before, worked great. Don't use it very often. It would be nice if it didn't stick out and take up so much room, but we can live with that. This is just a organizer for all of my hardware right here. These do have drawer slides that we can pull out, which is nice, and then the DeWalt organizer bins actually can lock up, and we can take the whole thing with us to the lake house or wherever we might need that hardware right there. For some reason, I forgot to talk about the dust collector when I was out there, which is a vital piece of the shop. Very, very important to keep the dust down and get the chips out of the workspace. It is plumbed to all the machines in the shop, or almost all of them, with 4-inch sewer and drain PVC over to a Oneida V3000 cyclone system with a silencer on the filter. It is a wonderful machine. This is Drill Rack 2.0 right there, which is, it's got improvement for battery storage right here compared to the other one, but otherwise not so much different than my first edition. Got all the rigid drills right here. We have extended open bin storage from what I had last time. Just something you kind of need. It does get filled with dust, get some cobwebs, but you gotta have a place to put some of this stuff in your shop. I have stuff there, I have stuff here, we have stuff everywhere. This tool bench is new. This is a Husky that I got on a good deal at Home Depot. This has just got some random tools that used to be kind of behind you in the miter saw station that I needed more readily accessible over here, laid out a little bit easier to get to. And that's a portion of it, and a portion of it is stuff that I don't show here on YouTube, but it's other things that I do in the shop is stored in the bottom there, so that gives me some space for some other items that I need to have in the area. Sliding down a little bit more to the south, we got our clamp wall. Not much changed, although I think I might have more stuff on here. I had some things on the floor in the last video, and we got some more Bessie parallel clamps, which are fantastic clamps if you ask me. They've never let me down, and you can never have too many clamps as a woodworker. If you want to send me more clamps, I'm sure I can find some room for them. Over here we have the K5 from Craig, I think, right here, which I still utilize that right here on the workbench if I have some smaller pieces. But as we work our way that way, you'll see we have a Craig Foreman down there as well. Kind of where we started the video, sort of this angle. We're looking at the bandsaw again. This is a Laguna 1412 with no branding on it. This was given to me by sawblade.com back in the day when we used to work with them. It's a great bandsaw. I really have no complaints besides the screw on the throat plate. Seems like you could have done something better than a screw, but got to get some new bandsaw blades for that. I broke one the other day, but need to go to Highland Woodworking and get myself some new wood slicers. I think are the name of the blade. That really, really good blades right there. Got my bands for my blades for the bandsaw. Do you call them bands? Hung up right behind here for quick access. Circle cutting jig right there, which is really the only jig that I use here with the bandsaw. Now turning a little bit more, and let's back you up so you can see, what do we got over here? So this is a Rockler Dust Right hose. This is a 40-foot hose, and it is connected to a mini CD06 Cyclone, which is connected to a shop vac. Now, it doesn't have a ton of airflow because of that really long hose, but I can get to all corners of the shop with that hose, and that alone makes the lower vacuum or suction very much handy to have that reaching all the way around. And then looking just below the dust collection system, we have my double flip workstation, which is still here with us, but I actually have 3 tools on there now instead of just the one that I had on there for years. So I have the Craig Foreman on here. It is not bolted on here, so I can't flip this one. But this is just a pretty good location for it right here. I still have my rigid oscillating spindle / belt sander. And then down below here, I have a DIYTyler double trim router setup, which is really handy when you got to switch between a bunch of different router bits. You can have them all kind of there ready to go, raise and lower one, and do your quick work right there. It's not for doing like deep cut trim where you have one router bit cutting one profile and another router bit cutting another, but I suppose you could do that if you really wanted to. Then moving into the center of the shop right here, the assembly table is unchanged. It's just moved a little bit further this way to allow me more space behind the table saw. Some things that I do have in here is I did get a Craig track saw, which is fantastic and much cleaner than a circular saw for breaking down material. Right under here, I'm not going to get it out because it's kind of heavy and awkward. I do have a power feeder, which is marvelous for making doors. You can run that right over the router table with the power feeder. You stick a board in, you don't have your fingers close to it, and you get a railer style coming out the other side. And then down here we have our Mirka Diros 6-inch sander with dust extractor underneath. Now, I was given that sander, so I can't really speak from experience of having to purchase something that costs $1,000. The Mirka sander with extractor costs about $1,000. That's very expensive, but I can tell you for sure that when you have an hours long sanding session, that is like an angel's wing using that compared to using just a cheaper name brand tool from the big box store. So that is a highly recommended tool that if you're looking for that tool that maybe someone that has everything needs to get something, that's a great tool right there. Great tool. In the assembly table, we also have a bunch of Craig clamps for gluing up pocket holes, some squares, and in my Kaizen foam drawers, we've still got some random things that I got to reach in here and grab to work on the assembly table. And then this is basically the home of all of the kind of hand power tools. Almost, I think everything in here is cordless except for the Makita biscuit jointer, which is a relatively new addition to the shop. Everything else is rigid cordless tools right there though. And then this monster is the new baby in the shop. This is a very, very new addition, working with Harvey Woodworking, Harvey Industrial, to place this beautiful table saw in the shop, replacing my very, very trusty Delta, which I have paid forward since I was given this saw here. Now this is a 4 horsepower dovetail sliding mechanism saw with a titanium nitride top. It is a beautiful piece of machinery, dead accurate out of the box. I have a video that came out, or a video is going to come out, specifically going through the setup of the shop, first use, and first impressions, but it is a monster saw. Now, mind you, this is not an apples to apples comparison from a Delta contractor style saw to a cabinet saw like this, which is just in a totally different league, but beautiful piece of machinery. This thing will destroy full blade hickory like nobody's business. It does have a blade guard that clips in there as well. It's got a riving knife, which was the biggest reason I wanted to upgrade the table saw. But then going from a 1.5 to a 4 horsepower motor, it's incredible. But you're going to be seeing a lot of this table saw in the shop for many, many years to come, as obviously this is the center point and a staple of any shop. And 2 last things. Right here, this is the HVAC for the shop. This is a Gree mini split. I did a video dedicated to this a couple of weeks ago, a month ago or so. Links to that in the description below if you want to know more thoughts about that. But it works great. In my shop size, because I oversized this unit, it doesn't run enough in the summertime to keep the moisture out. So you saw a dehumidifier back over by the drill press underneath all the drills. So when I'm not in here in the summer, I will run the dehumidifier. When I'm in here, turn the dehumidifier off and run the air conditioning in here if I actually need to cool it down a little bit to work. Before we go back outside and talk about the finishing setup, I brushed over the air filtration. This is a Wen air filter that I have right here. So that, in conjunction with the dust collection system, which is piped to all the shops, in conjunction with the dust hose on the shop vac and dust extractor on the sanding extractor, and then obviously my PPE right here. That's how I keep myself safe. That's how I keep the dust out of the air and the chips into the bin in this shop. So let's talk about finishing real quick. You can obviously brush, you can use rags, you can use foam rollers, all that good stuff. But my favorite is to spray finish or don't do it at all. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it at all, but that is, in my opinion, the best, the easiest, the fastest way to apply finish. So that's my favorite. I already told you about my favorite finishes that I have right here, but how do I put them on? And that is with a Fuji system, which was, again, provided by me. I did build up that cart on my own, bought all the accessories. I bought one of these spray guns on my own, so on and so forth. I've worked with Fuji for many years. Highly recommend their system. I got videos all about their stuff as well. But when I spray, I like to use a full face shield like this. This is from 3M. This is just a mouth and nose covering. That's for like heavy dust work that I'm going to do in the shop here. But I found that when I'm spraying, I would get stuff in my eyes, and putting goggles over that thing always fogged up. It was terrible. So the best way to do that is with the full face shield. And this has got organic vapor filters on there, so I can spray oil if I need to, and I can't smell it at all, which is great. So I have two different spray guns. This is the T75G, and that's the T70 siphon gun. One goes from the bottom, one goes from the top. That one's upside down, obviously. And I love the 3M PPS addition to that. You can find out more about that in that video. That's the only way to do it, though. I was selling the guy at work about that just today. So great stuff right there. Now let's head outside and see what we actually use to spray. So going outside here, this is again the unheated, the uncontrolled portion of the shop outside here. Got the welders out here if we do any metal work. And then this is the Fuji spray cart right here. The center point of this is the Fuji Q5 Platinum sprayer, which is a fantastic piece of machine. And then in here, I just have gloves. I have a spray log. I have the recommended tips you use. And then I got all of the 3M cups and adapters, some brushes, some sanding blocks and stuff like that. And this whole thing does roll around. So in the dead of winter, if I have something small and clear to spray, I can do it in the shop there real quick, so I don't have to heat the outdoor space. One thing I forgot to talk about when we were doing the wraparound look right here is this pallet racking that we built a while back. I don't know if we had this when we did the last shop tour, but on here you can probably see we have a bunch of lumber. So this is like my bulk lumber storage that I found a guy that I can get this lumber from about 45 minutes north of us. And then I have other suppliers that are kind of all around within half an hour of me that I get supplies from. But that's where I will grab material from and work my way into the shop right here, and then work my way around as we discuss, moving from the miter saw to the milling station to the bandsaw and then to the other tools right out here to the finishing. Moving back into the shop real quick before we do the outro, you probably noticed we did paint the ceiling and we did epoxy the floor, which really helped brighten things up. And those were some cosmetic changes we did, I don't know, maybe a year and a half to 2 years ago. And it's holding up okay. The epoxy floor does have some chips out in some areas where I may have dropped something. I didn't grind down the floor before I did that. I did do the cleaning and the etching and all that good stuff. But maybe with the floor and the slab getting colder, it doesn't have the best bond in the world. Anyway, that is the DIYTyler shop. All 480 square feet, 16 by 30 is the dimensions of this. We do have HVAC in here. We got a glorious set of tools that we can do everything we want as efficiently as we possibly can. If you have any questions on the tools, if you would like to know more about a certain thing, let me know and we'll see if we can answer those questions for you down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this 2022 DIYTyler Shop Tour. I have been doing woodworking videos since August of 2014. We started very humbly. We've worked our way up. This is a pride and joy of mine. Obviously love being in here, and I hope you guys love enjoying the time with me in here as we continue to build projects and share our experiences together here on YouTube. If you guys did enjoy this video and you enjoy our work, give us a hammer on that thumbs up button as it helps us out and gets this video in front of more eyes. I'm DIYTyler. You guys have a good one.